Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community on Thursday. And we're winding down 2025. Let's make the most of it this year. And we have a very special guest. In fact, let me say this much right now. I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people, and in my opinion, this gentleman who is our guest speaker today has the most soothing, pleasant voice that I've come across. I mean, just a beautiful voice. Just had to throw that out there, Ashik. So at this point in time, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our friend, Dr. Ashok Bhattacharya. Ashok, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are. And we're going to get into a fantastic session today. Go ahead, Ashik.
Thank you so much, Mark, for introducing me to this community and to these people. But just to be a tiny bit contrary, I'm not going to say a little bit about my story and who I am. I'm going to talk a lot about it. So I too am, like Thomas was saying, I'm not a cancer survivor, and I'm going to put this gently, yet to get cancer at some point, because if we live long enough, the chances of getting are pretty high. I am a medical doctor, and I started my medical journey in 1980. I became a psychiatrist in 1989, and I'm the kind of person that's been very interested in kind of one word, empathy. And empathy to me is not just a connecting driving force for all of us. It's a way that we can experience the experience that other people have. It's not perfect. Like there's no way I could say to either Thomas or Danny or Carrie or John or Joseph or Mark. Oh yeah, I know exactly what you guys are going through. I know because I had this. No, that is not empathy. Experiencing what somebody else is going through by comparison is sympathy. So sympathy allows us to have simpatico or similar sensibility. And that's why we have sympathy cards. And that's why when we go to funerals, we say things like, sorry for your loss and it's okay. Why don't we have empathy cards? I mean, there's an idea right there. A card that we can't because empathy at its very best is inaccurate. In other words, no matter how much I believe I can sense somebody else's experience, I can never experience it perfectly. It's an effort to get accuracy. And what is the most important empathy tool? These things. Danny and I were talking about guitars and music. Empathy is a natural empathizer is music. You can go anywhere in the world and make a rhythm and make a melody, and people will begin to relate to that moment. If you ask people to move in the same direction for 2 minutes, put on music, it's a lot easier. So there's something very special about music. It's also a different side of our brain than our thinking side of our brain. Our thinking side of our brain gets really stuffed up very quickly and causes burnout and stress. And that's why when someone has a significant amount of things on their mind, especially if they're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, treatments, and all the confusing stuff that we have to be aware of, yeah, we need to find a way to give respite from that experience. Now, I was 18 when my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, and she started out with stage 4 breast cancer. And she passed when I was 30. So I got 12 years with her. And what I know about cancer and cancer experiences, and then I'm not going to get too emotional here, I hope. If I do, please forgive me. But the point is that I learned from her, and I learned from working with her and by her as her son, but I became a doctor while she was going through her stages. When I got into medical school, I thought, yay, I'm going to learn so much about how to help people. And I did. I learned a lot about how to help people instrumentally, which here, can I do something for you? And it's one of the commonest reflexes that we have when someone says to us some bad news, and it could be something as, like a cancer diagnosis. People panic because they don't know what to say or what to do. So they often offer, is there anything I can do? And I always think, well, what's the alternative to that? And the alternative to that Is there a way that I can be? Can you be with that person in a way that conveys what they need? And what I want to talk about today, and please interrupt if there's something else you want to question or ask or steer the conversation in a direction that's meaningful to you. Because my goal is to make this meaningful to each and every one of you. But there's being a doctor, there's very few illnesses that the illness itself becomes our identity. So if you get a flu and the flu goes away, you don't become your flu. But if you get schizophrenia or bipolar, it's very common for people to be called a schizophrenic. In other words, their identity becomes their illness. And I would defy anyone to disagree with me that when you get cancer, it becomes a part of your identity. It becomes so suffused with your identity that it's hard to think of yourself outside of that space. It is not your entire persona. It is not all of what you are, of course. But that's the mistake people who don't have cancer make, who they're trying to figure out what to say or what to do with someone who does, because they're not a leper. It's not infectious. You don't have to treat the person as if they are now just a cancer. They are a person who happens to have cancer. So when our identity shifts, so just to give you a little bit of back history on what I do as a psychiatrist, I do a lot of couple therapy, but I also do a lot of work with people with post-traumatic stress disorder. And what is post-traumatic stress disorder? It is a trauma that changes somebody's identity, their definition of themselves. So their life becomes before it happened and after it happened. And I would defy anyone who says that cancer doesn't have that same issue. It is a trauma. To be diagnosed with it is a trauma to get treatment for it. It's a trauma to be continuously preoccupied with how much time do I have. And also, I'm going to just keep talking about this for a minute. The issue of time, as Thomas Botzler mentioned so eloquently, completely changes when you don't measure time by days, hours, and minutes. It's moments. What moment will I have next? And if anyone disagrees, please jump in because I don't want to be misrepresenting somebody else's ideology. But when my mom was passing, getting closer to her end, she stopped saying, "I hope I make it to January or July." She was hoping to make it to moments, and that was weddings, anniversaries, births. So to see one of our grandchildren being born, because a day doesn't mean anything if it doesn't have a moment in it. And when you have a cancer diagnosis, moments become very exquisitely precious, and they are anyway. You shouldn't have to have a dreadful situation come up to find moments, to redefine what moments are. But moments are really what any of us actually have. And to be super crass about this, life is really just a moment. And we want that moment to be momentous as much as possible. When I think of disease in general and how people relate to disease and how they feel about disease, one of the first things that happen when people get a diagnosis, especially one of cancer, is they feel alone because they are going through it as them in their own way with the condition that they have. And that's why these communities, whether it's Mark's community or Tim Soane's community, are so powerful. Because when my mom got diagnosed, I had no one to talk to. I was a medical student. I was you know everything about that because your family's. My dad was a psychiatrist. My mom was an art therapist who worked in a psychiatric hospital. So you're fine. You got this. You got it. Guess what? I didn't have it at all. I was scared, confused, angry, lonely, as a person proximal to someone who had a cancer diagnosis. And I think that's why it's so vital that when we have these experiences, we do reach out and that we feel comfortable reaching out. And if possible, and hopefully so, people reach right back to us. Because human beings are not designed to be like great white sharks, which is the creatures that swims around in the ocean, usually alone. three-toed sloths are the same. You don't see groups of them going around. But many other creatures are social creatures, and human beings absolutely are. And the other fun fact about human beings is we're designed to be insecure. So being anxious or feeling imposter syndrome or doubt, self-doubt is a natural ingredient we've been programmed with. I'm not talking about crippling anxiety that where people can't go out of the house. I'm talking about just that normal amount of slight uncertainty that makes us want to call a friend and say, "Hey, can I have a chat with you because I want to check out something?" Or why women call each other to know what dress they're going to wear towards the party. Guys don't do that, by the way, for some reason. You going to wear the green tie or not? But why do we do that? We reach out because we want to check to see if our experience can be validated by another person. And we rely on that. Another thing we rely on is to have abilities and adequacies, but also someone finding people in our community who has what we don't have, which is our weaknesses and our inadequacies. So we're designed to find those complementary characteristics that we can find in other people so that we can have connection and support. But the problem with getting a cancer diagnosis and going through all the treatments of it is that does anyone really get what you're going through? Can they empathize with your experience? And how can they conjoin with you if they don't quite know what's going on with you or if they don't get it? And there's some scary stats. I'm not going to alarm you all with this, but some cancers are not diagnosed until years into their progress. Like certain, Chris mentioned pancreatic. Like some of these diagnoses are not found out until symptoms are well on their way. Now, there's another story that I'm going to share with you that is about a friend I had when I was 8 years of age. Um, Again, if I get emotional, just I apologize. But I met this person when I was 8. We had both come from England to St. John's, Newfoundland, of all places. So we just crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Both of our dads were psychiatrists, and both of our mothers were professional women. And just between you and me, I had a crush on his mom, okay? Like it was nothing happened, okay? But it was anyway, moving on. And he was a brilliant guy, like super smart, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. I'm kind of have an average IQ. This guy was like up there. And I thought, wow, that good to have him. Super clean when it came to health. Very afraid of cancer his whole life. He had a little rhabdomyosarcoma in his hand here that he had removed when he was a kid. Um, and and a very active guy. We would bike together. We even traveled together once. One time we were in Trinidad in April 1986. At the same time, Halley's Comet was going over the equator right at that point, so I got to see Halley's Comet at that point. But we went down there. We were both single guys. We were sitting on the beach, looking out. We went down there because we were single bachelors looking to meet some girls on the beach, kind of thing. Nothing happened, of course. It was April, and there's no this is not funny, guys, but anyway, we were sitting together on the sunset, and the sunset in Tobago, if you ever get a chance, it's this massive sun. It's coming down kind of on the ocean. We're looking out of the ocean. We're sitting there alone, and flying fish are flying out of the ocean, catching flies, and thousands of them, and the sun is reflecting off their body. We kind of look at each other and we said we should be like holding hands or making out at the very least right now because it had that very sensual romantic moment. But we didn't. But the point is that we shared that moment and that lived with us forever. When he turned 60 on his 60th birthday, he gave me a call and said, "I have hepatobiliary cancer." Which just races through your body very quickly, and most people the prognosis is not very good at all. So I knew how much time he had. I was in Toronto. He was in Oxford, England. COVID was raging through the world, so I couldn't hop on a plane and go out to see him. So the best I could do was call him every Sunday, as best as he could have the energy for. And that happened for 18 months. We would speak as much as we could. And then COVID was beginning to wrap up. I managed to get on a plane to get out there. And I called him from London, said, "Listen, I can be in Oxford in an hour. Can I come see you?" And he said no, because he was afraid of getting COVID. He was very weak and very scared of getting COVID. He was at the end of his time as well. So I said, "Well, I can just come up and just stand on the street and wave at you. Like, please let me just do that." He said, "Oh, that's okay. Maybe next time." I got back to Toronto, and a week later, he was gone. Now, I did get to his gravesite a year later. I yelled and screamed and cried and hugged the soil and said, I miss you so much, man." But 53 years of a relationship with somebody. And again, all I mean to say by this, all I mean to be saying by this is that, cancer is there's some benefits, absolutely, when people's perspectives changes. But as far as my loss and what I've lost, a mother and a best friend, and many others that I'm not going to be describing today. But I think this is something that as being a physician, being a doctor, I think I wish I had more training in this as in medical school, and I wish to train doctors a bit more in this because I did not really start thinking about empathy. And I'm just going to hold this up for a second here. I didn't start thinking about empathy until well after I graduated because I didn't learn about empathy in med school. I learned about a trillion diseases and bizarre names all in Latin and treatments that most of them I've never seen. I've never seen a pheochromocytoma ever in my life. I've been looking for one for 40 years, never seen one. Then I thought, oh, maybe I'll get into psychiatry, and I'll learn about empathy there. It didn't happen either. Again, I learned a lot about a lot of diseases, more with German and French names, but and a lot of treatments as well. Some quite shocking, literally like shock treatment. But it wasn't until I graduated and I was starting working with my practice. I do a lot, mostly psychotherapy. I realized that these aren't people, these aren't diseases that happen to be in a person. This is a person who happens to have a disease. The shift in mindset of who is this person that has this disease, as opposed to this is the disease and somewhere behind there is the person. So when people see me, irrespective of their diagnosis, I want to know who the person is because that's who this disease happened to. That's who is dealing with the disease and their personhood. And that's not just them as an individual. It's all those connections in their village and the community, their family, and the people you're connected. They're affected by their diagnosis. And for me, as a supporter of cancer, I think that's what people call me in my situation. I was affected by people's cancer in a profound way. And if I get cancer one day, will that help me cope with that at some point? I hope so, because I think I'll have some sense of what the people who are trying to support me, if they choose to, might be going through. And it's a strange conversation to have. How can I help you help me? But it shouldn't be, because human beings are designed to want to help each other. It's one of the biggest dopamine hits we get, not cocaine, but helping each other meaningfully. And when someone tells me, "Oh man, what you did really helped me," I'm high for about a week, really. And if someone says, "Oh, you really hurt me," and that was, oh, I'm desperate to get another high. We are programmed to want to do that to each other and for each other. So human beings got planted on the planet, what, half a million years ago? We invented language about 50,000 years ago. So that means a good couple of 100,000 years. All we had was facial expressions, gestures, and grunts, and some vocalizations. That's all we had. And then someone said, "Well, what about consonants? What about B and P and S and T?" So great, let's have some then words came out, and then we came up with basically onomatopoeia, which is a word that sounds like the sound, like bam and swoosh and splash. So that they emulate the sound. And then, so what about other words? I want to speak to the guy who came up with the word the. Like, how do you explain that word before that word's even there? I mean, isn't that crazy? There's a smart guy. Let's come up with the. Um, Because words are really what are words? They're metaphors of thoughts and feelings. And when I'm talking to someone, I've done lots of palliative care work with cancer survivors in my field. I think I have a bit of a natural interest in that, and certainly a lot of curiosity. Some of the wisest conversations I've ever had with someone is someone who's got a cancer diagnosis, and I'm speaking to them, and their time is getting short for them. I've learned so much from those people, a lot more than I've ever learned from a book or a classroom or a lecture ever. Those are the best lectures I've ever, and I absorb them. They go right into my heart. It's not like they go into my mind, into my cortex. They go here and they go into my mind. And that's the best way to learn is through your heart. And I think this is the best way to gather information. You can touch somebody's heart, you know you're going to touch their mind because we remember how people make us feel a whole lot better than what they told to us. Also, the way they say it, right? That goes back to that how language came about. The way we say things is what's called metacommunication, which is everything we say with outside of the words. If I say, I absolutely agree with you, that's confusing because I'm shaking my head. Because we pay more attention to those gestures, actually, the words might betray at that. Does anyone have any comments or conversation? Because I don't want to hog this, because I'd like to hear some feedback right now. Go ahead. What you got?
I, if it's okay.
Carrie, absolutely. Great to see you, Carrie. Thanks for joining in.
Nice to see you as well. When you were talking about when you were uh, in medical school and your mother was diagnosed, and you got a lot of people saying things like to you, like "you've got this," them assuming that you had some specific knowledge of how to cope with what was going on because you were in medical school, but you may have been feeling like, oh, I'm not sure if I've got this. That really resonated with me because me being a fairly strong and determined positive person, I got a lot of that from people who know me, trying to be encouraging right after I was diagnosed. You've got this, or you go girl, or stuff like that. And I was like, inside I'm thinking, like, I don't think I've got this. But my personality was like, I found I caught myself really trying to protect people closest to me, and sort of put on this front of, okay, yes, I can do this, when deep down I was terrified inside, and thinking, oh my god, am I going to die? And I have a son with special needs, and what will I do? And but I found that resonated with me when you said that, because of certain things about you, other people assumed that you've got this, or that just the sort of awkwardness of other people trying to be supportive but not knowing exactly how, or being empathetic to your situation but not knowing what you needed. So that really, I found I resonated a lot with that, what you were saying.
So, Carrie, every time I see you, you're always smiling. I mean, there's something incredible about the way you make people feel with your smile.
Oh,
And I too agree that that can be somewhat um, complex for you. And I think, in my training, we learned something called masked depression. And what that means is someone's wearing a mask over their face, a smiling mask, and behind that they feel very sad. And I'm not saying that's what's going on with you, but what I'm saying is that we all want to know when we ask the question, "Hey, how you doing?" that the other person is fine. And we hope they say fine. And it would be an interesting experiment to say, I'm not fine at all, and I could really use a hug or a bit of your time, or just can we just go do something? Can we watch a show together? Can we just hang out? And I think, Thomas, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, as far as that comment about, I guess how people perceive, I kind of lost my track. But of wanting to, um, I guess, help and Actually, I'm gonna have to come back because I kind of lost my train of thought, which as you all may know happens. So I'm gonna come back and try to collect my thoughts.
Happens
So
to me
continue.
all the time, sir. I
All
got
right.
this chemo immune. I'm on immunotherapy mainly, and it's just going through it. The mental, what just exactly what the doctor's talking about. The mental stress that cancer alone puts you through just has got me like on a half-second delay, and I'll be looking right at it, and it'll just poof, and it's very understandable, sir. Because back to what the doctor was saying, if I may give you a couple seconds to catch your breath or whatever. I work very much in the empathy range when it comes to a lot of things in my life. You could say I'm a little bit dramatic, maybe over dramatic. When I got cancer, as it pertains to depression, I hit the bed and I didn't get up. I got down to 163 at my lowest. I had chronic digestive issues. Everything was just spread out, and I always believe that's got a significant amount to do with my psychological, let's say, aptitude at that moment, what I'm willing, like the doctor was saying, what I'm willing to let come in at that point. So I'm laying in bed for about 6 months because I didn't know whether I had lung cancer or not. It started with bladder cancer. They found 2 5 millimeter nodules in my left lung and said, okay, we can go in and it's really dangerous. I think it's a lymph node. I think it's this and that. If you don't mind waiting a year for another CT scan to see if they grow. So that's quite a conundrum, which also goes back to what the doctor was talking about, and a lot of people talk about over and over and over. There's always some hurdle to deal with. So I'm a little unorthodox. So I said, yeah, I don't want to die right now. I survived bladder cancer, so let me wait and see if these grew, because there was a chance that they were some fungus or mold, right? So I spent all that time in bed, lost all that weight, and only when I was ready did I get up, when I felt like I was going to survive after that CT scan. I packed it away. I'm going to die. And then I looked at my chart one day and it said, you got a CT scan pulmonary. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to die. And I had already given up all my I gave away my first pick and to a guy I taught how to play guitar. And then from then till now, which is over a year ago, step by step up the ladder, out of the hole of health, mental health and physical health, just terrible. I was an alcoholic. I was a diabetic before I got cancer. And then, I realized that cancer was a great motivator. So it's been a karmic experience for me, and it changed my entire life. I used to weigh 320 pounds. Not that that means everything, but that's a physical display of how much it affected me. So I'm with
So
you.
I thank you very much for allowing me to collect my thoughts. So kind of back to what Carrie was saying and how people perceived her. I was a cheerleader. I cheered in college, high school and college. And and so when I got cancer, a lot of my friends and family were like, "You got this, you're the rah rah guy." But I wasn't off in private. I mean, I ran restaurants and stuff like that, but I was not, when I got cancer. It wasn't the, oh, I got this. It was more like I almost kind of eschewed the details. Like I've said, I'm one of the worst cancer patients because I didn't know the names of my lesions. I didn't know the names of my medicine. I was just like, is it working? Great. Don't need to know any more than what my symptoms might be and if it's going to work. And other than that, I don't need to know the details. I don't need to focus on those details. And so, but in hindsight, it's probably me more um, not really accepting it at the same time. Part of my mindset is like maybe I was more in denial than anything, and I didn't realize I was in denial for years that I could possibly die. And so, because I had what they called was the most curable, the cancer you want to get, throat cancer you want to get, and it's most curable. So it's like, great, I'll go through 3 months of hell, drop 70 pounds, and then I'll be good on the other side. And that was the case until it came back. And so that changed, and that really changed a lot. That's where perspectives was really changed, because for me it was the second round, because then it became, oh no, you have this, and you're gonna have this, and we're just gonna slow the progression down as much as possible. So that was a much different message than the first diagnosis, obviously. And so that the second diagnosis is one that really kind of switched my overall thinking and my viewpoint. And then as now time comes to where I'm at now, obviously it's continues to evolve in one way or another. And each day is kind of different. He mentioned moments. That got me because like one of the things I'm shooting for is my oldest granddaughter's eighth grade graduation in June. Um, so yeah, I mean those moments are important. So thank you.
So thank you so much, Thomas and Danny. And this perfectly illustrates a point. Look at these two men, powerful, intelligent, beautiful men, having this very intimate conversation with each other about something that would never happen if they both worked in the same workplace, and had the same diagnoses, but there wasn't that space to have that combination. And I'm a guy, of course, and I'm staunch feminist, and I did ballet and figure skating for years, and all these kind of things. Um, I'm straight, and not that who cares. But this is the point, though, is that men don't typically talk to each other this way. You know, I've been working as a therapist for years, in the room with my clients. Male clients would never cry in a session. I get on virtual calls and now the tears are falling. Why? Because we're not in the same room with each other. Men are programmed when they're in the same room with each other. Do I need to fight you or do I need to kill you? And that suppressive thing is there. We're so primal in so many ways. And when we remove that and we're in a virtual experience with it, or we have an absolutely intense traumatic experience, like guys coming back from war together, or firefighters or cops who work the same beat together, or two men who have struggled with cancer. It's just like those walls are not there right now. They don't need to be there. They never needed to be there in the first place.
Mm.
And my job, the way I look at my job is always being to try and get on the same side of the wall as the person I'm talking to. Because if you can do it, you don't have to break the wall. That we need our boundaries, we need our defenses 100%, because not everybody gets it. But if someone kind of sees that I'm on the same wall with them, then they're going to they're going to be able to have a much better experience. They're going to have a more vulnerability. They're going to have more flexibility of what they can talk about. They're going to feel safer because we are designed to be paranoid. Don't forget that tribe on the other side of the hill. If you're living in caveman times, you're always looking out to make sure that they're not coming up to hurt you. So paranoid is normal. Now, you guys are fantastic, by the way. So I've already written down a little couple of words here. Does anyone know what this is? I'll read it out for you if you can't. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Anyone know what that is?
Yep. Five stages of grief.
They're the stages of grief. Now, I learned about the stages of grief, and I thought, oh, cool. I know the stages of grief. And I'm not saying it's not useful. It's very useful. But guess what? People don't go through the stages of grief in the right order off sometimes. Sometimes it's like musical chairs. Sometimes there isn't a chair that you're supposed to sit down in, even though the music is just stopped. So where do I sit now? Okay, well, I'll say I'm in one stage. The denial is definitely, usually the first reaction. Definitely, usually, and I'll say that carefully. So when Thomas put up his hand and he started speaking, and then he said, "Okay, I need to circle back to that," and Danny very very kindly created some space for Thomas to recollect his thoughts and come back. Is it chemo brain? Is it cancer brain? Is it pregnancy brain? Is it period brain? Like, I'm sorry, these are just things we have in our community. Um, part of it is these stages bashing about in our head. And going back to my friend of 53 years who had cancer, um, who had the little cancer in his hand, and then he got it in around, it was grabbing the portal artery, which is the artery that goes into your kidney. His cancer was grabbing that, strangling it. And at the same time, if it broke it, he would have bled out in seconds and passed away. He was in denial for a very long time. And even though I was having my conversations with him, it was like we never talked about death until the very end because he hadn't accepted it. And it takes people usually 4 to 5 months to accept their death, and which is if that's what's going to happen. And he wasn't. And I said, man, you need to tell your parents they're in their 90s. He says, no, I didn't want to stress them out. I said, well, how do you think they're going to feel if your wife calls them saying, your son passed away and you didn't know? Anyway, he finally did 6 months before, but it took him a year into his diagnosis to tell them. Anger is a very common reaction too, but I think when we're dealing with Carrie, I'm not going to pick on you ever, okay? But when we're dealing with someone who doesn't ever look angry, they might be furious on the inside. And what happens if you have an emotion that you don't express? It goes right into your body somewhere. Now you can say, so what are tears? So tears are the quintessential psychosomatic moment, right? Our designer invented tears so we could tell each other people there's something intense going on. Could be tears of laughter, tears of joy, tears of pain, tears of sadness. But we actually have a psychosomatic mechanism to communicate to each other there's something big going on. If you're speaking to someone and they're welling up, that changed the conversation. That really changed the conversation. So I think of every organ in our body, the skin as well. We might blush or we might go white. It communicates all kinds of stuff as well. Too many stories in my head right now. Let me just clear that. So our hearts definitely responds to our emotions very, very quickly. Our guts, how many times you've been nervous about a situation? Oh, gotta go to the bathroom right now, otherwise the urge to urinate, etc., etc. So I could go on about every body part, but guess what? Every body part has the capacity for communicative value. Lihia, go ahead.
Yeah, I have for so much time I have been thinking about, I know someone, there is someone a little bit close to me. This person, she knows she got cancer. At the beginning, she was denying. She was saying, no, it's not cancer. Now we realize it's cancer. And the problem now is she denied to get any treatment, any medication, everything. So she said to us, I'm going to survive until I can. So what can we do in these kind of situations? Because it means that she doesn't want to fight, or I don't know exactly what is happening inside of her. I try to understand her, but just imagine our concern about her, right? Because we know what is going on with her. She got breast cancer, but she doesn't want to do anything, to the point where the doctors, the last time, they say to her, okay, go, because if you don't want, they get a little bit angry, I think, because she said, no, I don't want it. Even she got a little bit like mad or something. So we are worried about her.
Are you asking my advice on this?
Exactly. What can we do, or what attitude is the correct one? Because it is difficult, right?
So you're introducing a question around the right for someone to deny treatment, or the right for someone to have treatment. It's a bit of a complex issue. But I
Yeah.
think what's happening here, I've never met this person, and I don't know you well enough here as well. But very commonly, the first reaction to a cancer diagnosis is, I don't want to do anything about it. I don't want it, no treatments. I don't want to have any surgeries, quite understandably. So the question that I would have, like if I was knowing I was seeing this person later this afternoon, I would say that there's a lot of people who have a lot of concerns about you. You have this condition. This is a cancer diagnosis. There's some tests and treatments and perhaps some procedures that might want to have happen. I'd have to test to see how much anger she has, because there's two types of anger. There's aggressive anger in your face, and there's passive aggressive anger. Like, I'm not going to do anything. And I don't know this person, so please forgive me for extrapolating beyond my ken here. But this sounds like passive aggressive anger. This might be her aggression held in a very passive way, like going on strike. So
It seems to be passive. It seems to be passive. It's
it
not
seems to be
like.
passive. But you can't help someone who has passive aggressive anger unless you enrage the anger. the aggression.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would say, I'm a bit of a I poke around a little bit. I'm known for being a bit direct with people, but I would say it would be quite normal for someone in your situation to be furious. And once you've
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
engaged a little bit of the anger, just a little bit of it. You don't need the whole sweater, just one thread from the sweater. Then you can very, very gently begin to reel it in and get her engaged with the anger, her fight. Because the fight
Mm-hmm.
is what you want people to have. Not too much, right? But right enough to have that fight. The passivity, again, especially if she needs treatment urgently, could make things happen too late. So I would very gently get her to talk about her anger. Now that's a
Mm-hmm.
therapy technique, obviously I've been trained and whatever, to have some experience in that. But I think when we are talking to people about, especially who are in this particular place, and I had the same thing with my friend. Like he was very passive about it. I had to very gently kind of say, well, how do you feel about that? And remember, I bring back stuff from the history that we had before. Remember, you said you'd always do this. We did. Now, I have a lot of patients over the years who said to me, I call my patients clients, by the way, but for this conversation to make it clear who I'm talking about, who are suicidal and say, I wish I had cancer right now because I would do nothing about it and then I wouldn't be blamed for my death. I'm thinking, do you know anyone who has cancer? Do you know anyone who, do you realize what you're asking for? Most of them renege, when I have a conversation with them about that. But I think when we're talking about anger and denial and someone who's kind of pushing that away, my strategy is to engage the most powerful emotion that's pulling them in.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's the anger. It's not the passivity. In this case, it might even be the denial. And I would say to anyone in this room that our emotions control us a lot more than our thoughts. I'm happy to fight about that if you want to. But if you don't get somebody's emotions, if you get them to be aware of their emotions, in touch with their emotions, and being able to regulate their emotions and then direct their emotions, if you can't be participate in that process with somebody, you're not going to get any influence with them or for them. You might get a little bit. There's two ways to control someone by getting them to fear something or getting them to respect something. And if you can get someone to respect something, the loyalty and the trust that you get is very different than fear-based leadership, where you get someone to do something
Mm-hmm.
because you frighten them. So I wouldn't want to scare her. I would want her to respect my opinion as gently as possible, and say I'll be here for you, of course. And at the same time, just get access to the anger that she might be having. Does any of that help?
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing what you had said. In certain case, I was thinking similarly to you because I always think if you go gently with someone talking about anything, I mean, love and kindness is the best way to start talking to someone, especially when we know they are going through these kind of emotions, especially like anger or fear or something like that. So I think that's the best way. The thing is, I haven't had like the chance to talk to her directly, but I don't know why I'm sure if we start like this way, like getting with emotions, not directly with the topic, but getting that she can trust us a little bit. So I think it will be easier for her to accept, to get into the process.
Yeah, like I want to make it absolutely clear for all of
Mm-hmm.
us that if you don't build rapport with somebody, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
make any effort
Exactly.
to build rapport, if I'm selling cars and someone comes in and say,
Mm-hmm.
"Man, you look
Mm-hmm.
like you need a Maserati right now," and I haven't made
Mm-hmm.
any rapport with them, I don't know. They just got married. They're going to have twins coming. They need a multi-purpose vehicle, a minivan or an SUV with extra seats in the back. If I don't make any rapport with them, I'm going to make all the wrong decisions about how to process that person.
Exactly.
So the first step of empathy is to ask.
Exactly, exactly. And I think when we have a base, very nice and strong connection with the person, it's easier than when we just talk based on what is happening. And in that case, you gave me a lot of ideas today, and thank you so much because I was waiting for this. It's very important. Thank you, doctor.
Well, it's important to me. I think conversations that we have with each other can be extremely difficult. And just
Yeah.
earlier watching Thomas and Danny interact, if we get behind those walls and make it absolutely not just undifficult, but pleasant
Hmm.
and connective, people feel better when they make a
Yeah,
connection. People feel better when that connection has purpose. People feel better when that purpose works and you get that dopamine hit of I actually really helped somebody. And
that is true.
don't we all want to be high on that? Irrespective of
Hmm.
how egregious what we're dealing with is that we're going through. These are the very
Hmm.
principles of our human connected existence with each other because we
Yeah.
want to have that connection. That connection is essential. Russ Hedge, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Oh, Lihia, thank you so much for
God
participating.
bless you.
Great to see you, Russ. How are you doing?
Hey, thanks. That's not good. You are spot on. I love all that you're talking about, and I learned so much listening to you. Thank you. Um, I just was really thinking about the human connection part. Something that I found really difficult at times is just sitting back with people and listening and really just being supportive when they need it instead of always trying to solve their issues. And I think that's a lot of times naturally as humans, us guys especially, fixers and want to get things taken care of. And I'm a big talker. So a lot of times it's difficult. And I've had to be really intentional about that. As I went through my cancer journey, um, that was probably one of the most uplifting things is when people would just be there for me and just listen. And even though I'm a really positive, upbeat guy, everybody, we all have our times. And through the journey, there were plenty. And so, I just relate that. And I think a lot of times we think connecting and supporting and adding value to people always has to be spoken. And I think a lot of times just my beautiful wife just always reminds me, sometimes she just needs me to be there, listen, and that's that's all that I need to do. The other day I had a great conversation with somebody. In that conversation, I think I said 3 words and I just listened to them and I went, oh, okay, yeah. And I just listened the whole time. And at the end, they said, this was so amazing. Thank you. This was the most amazing conversation I've had all week. And I just kind of chuckled since I hadn't really said anything. And I said, thank you that I could be here for you. And so I just think that's so important. And I love all that you're saying. Thank you.
So, Russ, you just threw a couple of idea grenades into my mind. Thank you for that. And thank you for participating in this experience with me today. Um,
Can I say something, Ashok?
oh, Mark, of course. This is you don't have to ask.
Wow. I know you got a train of thought going. I've heard you a number of times now, and I think the beautiful thing about what you do, and you don't have cancer, and yet you're able to talk to us face to face, whether it's Zoom or whatever, you're able to talk to us on our level. You're able to connect on our level that we understand, that we're looking to, like connect with on a certain level. You talk to a lot of doctors and teachers and professors and things like that, and they're talking from up here. They're talking down to us. And I think not only do you have just an incredible soothing voice, is you're able to bring yourself down to eye level, look us in the eye and say, and tell us the way it is. And you had mentioned earlier that, you didn't want to get emotional. I love people when they get emotional because that tells me that they are passionate about what they're saying and about what they believe in. And I think that is so important. And so I just want to thank you and really, really appreciate, the more I hear you, the more I appreciate you because your insight is really second to none. And it's just you're such a gift to our community. I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, those are very kind words, Mark. And I'm going to say something that is going to be contrary to what you just told me. I don't have insight. I just listen. I listen to what people tell me. The wisdom I have, if I have any, is the wisdom I have collected. I'm a bee. I look for flowers who have pollen for wisdom, and I collect that. So I have so many experiences speaking to people with cancer over the years, and I've listened and listened. And so when you're saying that I know something, I'm just sharing with you what I've learned. And to me, so I absolutely thank your comments, and I thank you for being you and for helping me to be part of this. But I want to make it super, super clear that anything I'm saying is really something that somebody's shared with me. So that someone's given me a gift of that knowledge. And I see Harriet just came into the room. Hi, Harriet. Great to see you here. And thanks for coming. But I think wisdom for me is my definition of wisdom is realizing how much you don't know and being open to learn more. I mean, that's way cooler than thinking, the minute your Encyclopedia Britannica is finished, it's out of date. The minute it's finished, it's out of date. And I want to say something. So I came up with an acronym when Russ was speaking. I apologize for thinking about something while he was actually talking. I came up with the acronym for the word fix because he's right. When people listen, especially us guys, we immediately start going into fix mode. And the problem with being in fix mode is you're not listening to the person anymore. Your cognitive cortex is looking for solutions. So your ears aren't absorbing. Your mind is now running around in the warehouse looking for the right tool to fix this person's problem. You can already tell that the person's kind of checked out from listening mode because they're kind of looking around and because they're actually looking around in their mind to fix your problem. Fixing somebody's problem is not the fix. Understanding the totality of their problem from their perspective as them, who they are, is the beginning of the data you need to get to begin to fix them. So my acronym for fix is really to focus and investigate, and the X is to X yourself. It's not about you. It is not about you. It's about them. So you can focus and investigate where that person's at and remove yourself from the equation. I always say that empathy is about self-negation. The minute I think, oh, I went through that, therefore I know what that person's going through, I lost the game. Empathy is about saying, I went through a very similar experience, but I want to know how you felt going through your experience as you. That's empathy right there. How did you feel that? And if I listen to that and I bring that listening to my experience and I get into a meeting with Mark and you guys, and I put that right back to you. The only reason I know how to speak to people who have conditions I've never had is because I've been listening. Can you imagine me telling a woman, "Oh, when you go through labor, I know what you're going to be going through." She'll slap me, especially if she's going through labor in that moment. So if you tell people, "I know what you're going through," you might be right a sliver of the time, but you're going to be wrong most of the time. And empathy is acknowledging your ignorance and be open to learn what somebody else is going through. And that to me is powerful and interesting. And making sure your Encyclopedia Britannica is never finished. You're always in a continuous state of learning and absorbing. And when you have that as a mindset, especially if you're a healer and you're in the healing business, and you meet with someone and they say, "Oh, you just have this, and this is the pigeonhole, and this is the treatment, this is what we're going to do." That doesn't build the same amount of trust as, you know what, we might have some ideas about this. Let me hear about where you're at, what you're going through, what you're experiencing, because we need to tailor make this to you. I had a suit made in Italy for my daughter's wedding a couple of years ago, and boy, are they precise. And that suit fits me because it was designed to fit me. And I think tailoring your approach to someone very carefully and beautifully, and that suit fits, and oh my gosh, this is like a glove. What does fits like a glove mean? It means that it's precise to your dimensions. And that's just one aspect of empathy, the dimensions of your body. What about the dimensions of your mind and your heart and your soul and all the other parts of us? So It's a never-ending process of discovery and learning. Any other comments or
Shock,
talks?
this is John. This is
Go
John
ahead.
Flugie. And one of the things that Mark said was that people are passionate or that they have a passion, and people can see that. The other part of that is that they know you care about them. The other idea is that it's an unrealistic expectation to go to the people that you have encouraged and expect them to have that same ability to come back and encourage you. You've got to go find the people who are the cheerleaders, like you're a cheerleader for other people.
Have you finished your thought, John?
I believe so. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So, and I appreciate everything you've said today. It's been great.
Thank you so much, John. And you have an amazing face, by the way. So it's just great to hear your voice as well. But let me say something about that. And I'm not a drinker, okay, first of all, but I do like a little glass of red wine, just a little half a glass. I've developed some interest in that. My wife is almost a sommelier, so she loves to have food, and she's a foodie, and she's interested in wine as well. So when I first went to my first wine tasting course, I thought, well, it's just a squeezed grape into a bottle, and what the heck? So it's been hanging around for a while. Maybe it was oaky smoky, who cares, right? And so I go to the wine tasting course, and we're looking at the wine, we're swirling around, we're looking at the wine again, we're sniffing, and I said, "What the heck? Let's just drink it. What really? What are we going to learn here?" And I realized, wait a minute, I'm so ignorant. I am so ignorant. Wine has a texture, it has a color, there's a sugar content that makes it sticky, so we can look at the legs of it. We can smell it, has an aroma that changes over time as it oxidizes, and we have a little sip, swirl it around. It tastes different on different parts of your tongue, including with the smell. And the grapes are grown in different soils, different parts of the world, different temperatures, different environments. It boggles my mind how much I learned in a wine tasting course. I think, holy gosh, who knew? But then I thought, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Is empathy teachable? Because a lot of people just think empathy is just grapes in a bottle. Could we teach people how to be more empathic? Is that possible? Now, I've been laughed out of a room full of psychiatrists when I asked that question 10 years ago. But guess what? Empathy is completely teachable. People can learn how to be more empathic. I'm not asking people to become so swamped with empathy they can't function. That's a boundary problem. And empathy needs boundaries too. If you don't have boundaries on your empathy, you're going to sink. But can we train people to be more empathic? Absolutely. Because we can train, just as Russ was saying, we can train people to just listen. The most powerful thing you can do for someone is just hear them out. Hear them out. The power, I mean, confession. There's a whole place where people just talking, journaling, right? No one's responding to your journal except your inner mind, right? So these things like just expressing your thoughts and feelings into a space of acceptance. Why do people like dogs and cats around them? Because they will listen to you all day long and maybe bark and reply to you, maybe give you a little bit meow, but they are great listeners. Why? Because they are naturally empathic creatures. Cats and dogs can sense when something, we have epilepsy dogs who can sense a person's going to have an epileptic seizure before the person does, because it's literally smelling and sensing the electricity differences that are happening in that person and begin to respond and react. Wow, that's a huge capacity for empathy right there. Can we, as human beings, do that? Nope. No, not yet. We'll be able to maybe we'll have a little wristband that we'll wear and that can tell us that, or an AI bot that can do that. But the point is that we can try to do that. And empathy isn't necessarily an achievement; it's an effort. If you say, I didn't win, that's not what that's about. It's about leaning in to try. And people will never fault you for trying to be empathic with you. They will only fault you for not trying, if they even know that that's something that's happening. And my goal in my whole professional life, or as a human, or as a musician, which is also another empathic skill, is to kind of lean into that person's experience. What are they feeling? How can I reflect that back to them? Am I accurate? If I'm not accurate, then ask another question to get more feedback. And the more someone senses that you're resonating with where they're at, there's something really interesting that happens that's physiological, is that they will begin to relax, they'll have ease, and guess what? Their body will start to heal. The immune system inside our body is programmed to fight off any invader. It deals with cancers and infections and trauma and fevers and bugs and viruses. It's an army inside our body, and it is programmed to recognize a threat to our body. So if we can help someone by by giving their immune system some empowerment, some strength, some vitality. Here's a whole bunch of fresh batteries for you guys by an empathic resonance you're giving with them, and they got cancer. That's going to help, and or any illness really. Especially, I work with people with emotional conditions. The help is there, and what if you can make someone's immune system work better? Um, it's going to change outcomes. Not completely change a diagnosis necessarily, but it's going to be helpful with their immune system. And I've been saying this for years that if you create a healthy rapport with somebody and if you make them feel safe and comfortable and you empower them, if you can empower that person, that's going to go inside of them and help them to empower themselves. And we were talking about sleep earlier. What's the most powerful thing you can do for your brain functions and your immune system? Sleep. Your immune system does most of its work in stage three sleep. If you're not getting stage three sleep, you're not getting the repairs you're supposed to get done. That means you're more susceptible to, cancer, really, which is the conversation we're having today. So helping our immune systems in every way possible, nutrition, sleep, activity, exercise, love, community, relationships. These are only some of the things that can help our immune system. Why not? Doesn't have to cost you a penny to reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I was thinking about you today. It's a way we can get together, have a chat, or spend some time." Any comments about what I'm saying, guys? Thomas Anthony, go ahead.
Oh, goodness.
And then Carrie next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was actually looking to raise my hand. I got a new device here I'm working with. Uh, I want to thank you. You have an amazing face as well. I love your beard, the look. You do it well. You look very good for sure. Uh, and the value. I want to thank you for adding value to us, to me. One of the things, and your perspective. This is an outstanding perspective, and the conversations have been outstanding. The shares have been outstanding. Uh, and even the stories you've shared, they're very unique. They're very specific, and I think we can all relate to them somehow on some level, And I want to appreciate. I want to thank you, and I appreciate you for that. And I wanted to share. Uh, you mentioned the word "the" earlier. I don't know if you've noticed, but there are some people on social media where they put the name "the" or the name like in front of their name, like the Mark, the Kerry, and then the rest of their name, the Lahia. It's pretty interesting if you think about that as well. And for years, I've always wanted to like add value. Like anytime I have a conversation with someone, whether it's via social media or live, in person. I always want to like, what can I do to create value, to add value to someone's life, to leave them better off with our connection, with our communication than before I started that. So I wanted to share that with you, and also, uh, yeah, and it was just a different perspective. It was outstanding. And Kerry, I didn't, with this new device, I didn't see everyone. I thought all I saw was the people I acknowledged in the beginning. I didn't even see you there, Kerry, till you're like, oh, wow, look at Kerry's there. And after she spoke, and I realized like how many people were here all of a sudden, and George's and everyone else. So I want to just thank you. And thanks again, Mark, for this community and the shares. And I'm just curious, where are you living, Doctor? Where are you living now? You mentioned the UK earlier.
Yeah, I was actually born in England, back in the 60s, and my family moved to Newfoundland, back in the 1980s. I grew up there, and I came out to Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
Did my training in Toronto, and I live in a small town, a very snobby town just outside of Toronto called Oakville. It even sounds snobby, but it's a great little place. Love it here, and yeah, so we're having a cold winter day today, so that's where
Very
we're at.
cool. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I have cousins in Burlington, Ontario, which I believe is about 45 minutes
Next
from me.
door.
Oh, very cool.
I'm playing in a bar in Burlington tonight, okay?
Oh, awesome. Very cool. Outstanding. Awesome. So thank you.
Absolutely, Thomas, and anytime. As your energy is beautiful. Thank you so much for showing up. Harry Reid, what was on your mind?
Hmm. Hi. Yes, I I have a two-part question. First part relates to what you're talking about, but the other thing, the second part, I should start with first, if that's not confusing, so we don't run out of time and lose you. I'm not sure if you how much you know, or if anything, about the new book project that we're working on to try to develop a kind of a comprehensive, holistic guide for patients and caregivers for when people are first diagnosed with cancer. And I know that you had been put into our Facebook sort of chat about that. I'm not sure how much you're aware with it, but we are doing a quick meeting right after this call today, and I had tried to make you aware of it. I'm not sure if you have time today to be involved in that, but if you don't, I'm just wondering what would, in terms of contact details, what would be the best way moving forward for me to try to get in contact with you, because I'd be incredibly thrilled if you would write a
Yeah,
chapter.
Carrie, I think we're connected on LinkedIn.
Yes, we are. Is
Yeah,
link a better method for to keep you updated if you don't have time today to hear about the that after the call?
yeah.
That
I think the best thing for us to do is to have a private conversation with each other, and that way
okay.
we can establish what our needs are and what our timeframes are, and etc. Rather than doing that in this forum here, if you don't mind.
I have one
What's the first question?
first question is earlier when you were speaking, you said that some of the most valuable insights you gained were from speaking with patients who you work with in palliative care, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share just even a quick example of something that you gained along those lines, because you mentioned that you learned more doing that type of work than reading a book or etc. I just wondered if you had a quick example of that, or if not, that's okay. I was thinking of that.
So my mom was 56 when she passed away. I had a patient that I was working with, an incredible human being. I'm going to get emotional talking about her. And I was working with her. She had an abuse history, and right in the middle of treatment, she developed liver cancer, and she couldn't come out to see me anymore. And I was living in Oakville, and she was living in Toronto. So, this is a bit off the charts, but this is who I am. The only way she could see me is if I physically went to her house. And I was in my early 30s. My wife was, we had some kids. I had other reasons to be in Toronto. So it was like an hour to get to her. I'd see her for about as long as she could see me for. I saw her once a month for about a year until she passed away. And and at the same time, I was working with a rock band, and she was very curious about it. So we made an album. So I gave her my album and said, "Here, want to listen to this?" And she said, "Okay, thank you. I'd love to hear it." And I came back a month later, and she gave it back to me. And I remember feeling upset. You don't want it? Like you don't want to keep it? And I didn't say that to her, but she said, "I can't take it where I'm going." And I realized I'm so stupid. Like, what am I thinking here? She's leaving the planet. We both know it. And I'm thinking I'm giving her something. It's just more to take. She doesn't want more stuff to take. She experienced it, and she's giving it back. And I realized that her perspective is so different than mine. And in that moment, I went from being ignorant about where she was in her life to a little bit less ignorant about where she was in her life. That lesson has never left me. She passed at the same age my mother passed. So clearly, there's other things driving me to work with her than just that. I actually went to her funeral. I didn't get up and speak because it was our relationship was very private. There was about 1,000 people in the room as well. She was one of those people. I stayed in the back, just watched and left and paid my respects that way. But I've never forgotten her ever, and I never will. Because every person that we meet is a potential lesson or a million lessons. Every person. And if you think they're not, you're just missing out. You're just missing out. Mark, back to you.
Thank you, Ashok. I just, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for just being you, for sharing, you, who you are, what you do on a level that we can digest. And it's a beautiful thing. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to close off this session for YouTube, and we will post this on our Facebook page. And so I just wanted to thank each and every one of you out there for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community. And I hope that each and every one of you enjoyed it as much as I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And thank you so much. So please make the most out of each and every day. We don't know when our time is going to be up. Our time is precious. Our time is beautiful. And, we're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. We're going to have everything in between. But let's make the most out of it. Do the most that you could possibly do. And we will see you next week on the Cancer Conquering Community. Thank you.